Welcome, and thank you for joining today's webinar, which is focused on the results of a year-long study comparing student and faculty outcomes when using Packback versus an existing learning management system. I'm Ann McGee, the moderator for today's session, but in a previous life, I served as president of Seminole State College in Florida for 22 years, and I'm now president Emerita. But more importantly, I'm a member of the Packback Academic Innovation Board and very pleased to be with you today. So thank you for joining us for what promises to be a lively and informative discussion. Before we begin, I want to cover a few housekeeping details so that you get the most out of the session. Throughout the discussion, as you have questions for the panelists, please leave your questions in the audience chat found on the left side of the screen. We'll address as many of those questions as possible in the audience Q&A, which we planned for about the last 15 minutes of today's program. And then members of the Packback team are also available in the chat to help answer questions and assist with any technical issues. Now, today's session is being co-sponsored by the League for Innovation, and we'd like to ask Dr. Rufus Glasper, President and CEO of the League, to join us and say a few words about why the League is sponsoring this and why they're backing Packback. Dr. Glasper?
Thank you very much, Ann, and welcome to everyone. The League is honored to co-sponsor this particular webinar today. As you well know, the League is focusing on cultivating innovation within our community college system and also a prime focus on learning and teaching outcomes. Over this past year or so, the League has been partnering with Packback to engage our colleges and also their community partners in terms of high school engagement, looking at the platform relative to student engagement and outcomes and also artificial intelligence. But we're also focused around professional development with faculty and discussing issues around pedagogy. So we're excited to be partnering with this particular initiative, and I also want to state that I'm enjoying my work also on the Innovation Board, and I hope you will enjoy today's webinar and reach out to us and make sure that you have any questions today that you engage yourself. So with that, I'll turn it back to Ann, and I welcome everyone for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rufus. So they asked me to give you a little bit more about my background. I had 48 years in community college education, primarily in Florida. But more importantly, I think I'm a community college graduate. And I would submit that the challenges that educators and our students are facing now make a tool like Packback critical, not only for student success, but for the success of our faculty. So that's why I joined the Packback Advisory Board and why I'm excited about the results of this study and the potential to see the expansion of this tool. So let's meet our panelists that we have with us today. So we have three outstanding educators here today. They are the Vice President Jana Kooi, who's Vice President of Online and Workforce Education at Florida State College at Jacksonville in Florida. Dr. Kathy Cecil-Sanchez, who's Vice President of Instruction at Lone Star College in Texas. And Dr. Kim Coffman, Professor of Psychology at Miami-Dade College in Florida. So I'd like to have us start, and we're going to try and make this as interactive as we can with you all, is to have the panelists talk a little bit about the context of their particular institution and what their goals were for becoming involved with this study. So Jana, can we start with you back there in the woods, please?
Yes. Thank you so much, Ann. I so appreciate it, and welcome to all the participants today. One of the things we have discovered in online education is one of the primary parts of having effective online education is communication. So when I had the opportunity to review Packback at one of our HERDI sessions, which is a national organization that reviews products, I found this to just be terribly exciting. We have got 44% of all of our enrollment is online at Florida State College at Jacksonville. And we really saw this, and we got great results, which we'll talk about later. but from Packback that really helped us fulfill the goals. We also are starting to move it for hybrid and on the ground, which actually Packback started on the ground. So anyway, I hope that's what you were looking for, Anne. Thank you.
Thanks, Jana. Kim, tell us about Miami-Dade.
Here we go. Miami-Dade is an HSI institution. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, undergraduate student enrollment in the U.S. We're first in terms of Hispanic undergrad student enrollment, and third, Black non-Hispanic undergraduate enrollment in colleges and universities across the country. And this is based on our 2019 data. And we also confer more associate degrees for community colleges overall. And we're number one in associate degrees for Hispanics, and number three for those awards for Black or African American students in post-secondary institutions. And you wanted to know a little bit about why I wanted to get in the pilot. As soon as I saw, on the same day that the pilot was announced, as soon as I saw the announcement, I looked at the platform and I joined in. I'm pretty well known for jumping in and trying new strategies, but once I saw Packback and I looked at the platform, I wanted to join because I was excited about the opportunity to create a community space in which my students would be able to ask their own questions and talk about what they were interested in. I found that really intriguing. I also wanted to participate in the pilot because I use active learning strategies already with my students, and I saw this as an opportunity to give them autonomy and choice, and I try to do that in many, many different ways in my teaching and learning strategies. And then one more reason I got into the pilot was I saw the platform as being a continuous platform rather than a module where they only see the questions for a week and then they disappear, as a way to scaffold their learning. And then, so I really wanted to try it. So I'm really proud to have been part of the pilot and still using Packback in all my classes at MDC. And I'm honored to be here to talk about our experiences there. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim. And Kathy, what about Texas and Lone Star?
So yes, Lone Star College University Park is one of seven campuses in the Lone Star system. We are north of Houston, and we're up there with Miami-Dade on size, pretty close to 100,000 students, and also a Hispanic serving institution. We have 3 bachelor's degrees that we have developed recently and are getting ready to add a 4th. So that gives us a little context on the University Park campus that I'm over, but then Lone Star College in general. And for Packback, my president heard about it at Hertie, and from there we were able to have some great conversations to see what options might exist with this. I taught online many years ago myself, teaching English, so I know the challenges that faculty have with online. And so finding an opportunity where students could get engaged in the curriculum, all the things that Kimberly commented about that made her excited as a faculty member, made me interested to find out what was happening and to see if this would be an opportunity that could really improve student success and engagement. And, you know, really, if you get the students curious about the class, they are more likely to stick through it and be successful. And so I've been excited to be part of this process.
Thanks, Kathy. And you all have heard Hertie mentioned a couple times. Hertie is actually the Higher Education Research Development Institute, which does deal with new products in higher education, particularly focused in community colleges. So let's talk about the study. So many of you are already familiar with Packback, either because you've used it or you were part of the study. But Packback is an inquiry-driven online discussion platform that differs from traditional LMS discussion forums in several ways. First, with Packback, students ask the discussion questions rather than the instructors. Secondly, the students are guided to write effective, open-ended questions through artificial intelligence-based coaching embedded in the system. And third, the AI on Packback also reviews posts on the platform and provides support to instructors by providing direct feedback to students, thereby helping them to improve their written responses. And then through the process of asking questions, students are able to reflect and take ownership of their learning. And this is a method which better supports student motivation and engagement. So here's the study. The study sought to compare outcome results and the quality of discussion and overall course outcomes for students using Packback compared to students using the institution's existing learning management system. And there were 10 institutions, and they're noted here on the screen, who participated in the 2019-2020 study, with nearly 70,000 posts from Packback and the LMS being analyzed as part of the study. And hopefully you all have had a chance to look at the white paper that goes along with this study. So here's the experimental design. Courses in the study spanned a broad range of disciplines and were selected for inclusion when 2 sections of the same course were taught by the same instructor, but using a different modality. One section of the course used Packback discussion with the same overall grade allocation and quantitative posting requirements, while the second section utilized the existing discussion solution within the school's learning management system, which was either Canvas or Blackboard. And at some of the campuses, historical grade data was also provided for analysis. So let's look at the findings, and we're going to involve our panelists here talking about the findings. So the first finding was increased student engagement. And you'll see from this chart, and primarily noted at the bottom, that when analyzed, students on Packback were shown to have nearly 2 times the median number of total posts than students in the control groups, despite equivalent quantitative post requirements, and nearly twice as many active users during the course of the week. Finding number 2 was improved discussion rigor. And while more students were posting each week and contributing more total content, the rigor shown in those posts also improved. 2 times as many posts on Packback contained a source identification compared to posts in the control groups. And this finding was separately validated in a recent study by the University of North Texas. And the posts on Packback also contained a higher median word count than posts in the control group. So Kathy, I'm going to ask you, can you share some of your personal observations related to the quality of discussion and engagement that you saw at Lone Star?
Absolutely. At LSCUP, we had faculty from multiple disciplines, English as a second language, biology, government, economics, and more, who utilized Packback and had great experiences. They found that it provided students with an opportunity to engage with one another in a capacity distinct from the usual responses. They're able to determine the different loci of interest from students and tailor lectures to include those interests. It helps students see in a tangible way that they are not alone in the questions that they have or the observations that they make. Additionally, faculty are able to shift from assessment to engagement because of the AI tools that generate the curiosity scores assigned to student posts. And as the curiosity scores allow for first level automated evaluation, faculty can focus to be the facilitator and participate in the conversation with students. That AI gave more quality feedback than a faculty member typically has the time to give, and students performed better with that support. It truly encourages them to be curious, and that's what learning is all about.
Do either of our other 2 panelists, do you want to add anything to Kathy's comments?
I would be happy to. One of the things I can agree, Kathy, I totally agree with you. That's exactly what happened at FSCJ. But the other thing that I thought was fascinating is the students felt more comfortable with the discussion because of the feedback. They could practice, go over it again, change it again. And that feedback, let's say they had a small, even a paragraph or something. If they didn't get it right the first time and the suggestion was, change a little bit or whatever, they could do it again and again and again. And this gave them the confidence to be able to continue in interaction, as opposed to, okay, if I raise my hand or do something or say something and I get shot down, then I never want to talk again. I don't know if you all found that or Kimberly did, but I found that with the students that was exciting.
One of the things that I'm going to mention and talk about later, I hope, is this idea of self-efficacy. And I think that by the students being able to see continuously throughout the semester what they wrote before, and the students are responding to them still, and they're still having these conversations, they're adding to scaffolding their information. I hope that it is building their own sense of capability. And it appears to be based on what my students are telling me. So,
Thank you.
of course.
So on finding number 3, which was improved grade outcomes. Differences were also observed outside of the discussion itself, and you've heard the discussion differences already discussed. In aggregate, students in the Packback groups earned a statistically higher rate of A's and a statistically lower rate of F's. Students also withdrew less frequently and earned fewer D's, though these results could not yet be validated as significant. So Jana, I know Florida State College at Jacksonville saw some interesting results related to the final grade outcomes. Can you expand on what you observed?
Certainly. A, B, and C's went up dramatically, even in the science areas and a variety of other things. And D's and F's both went down. I was expecting, greater retention, more communication, a lot of other things, not really expecting the grade differential. And this was truly significant for us. It really pushed the envelope, and the faculty did not change, their curriculum or, expectations. So I think this was, for us anyway, it was truly significant. And we found that the students, we retained them much longer and many more.
Kim or Kathy, any comments from you two?
I have to second exactly. We had the same results at University Park. It was surprising. You expect a little bit of an improvement maybe, but not this really dramatic increase in A's and drop in D's and F's. That's to see that getting curious about the class and guiding and owning that conversation switched, turned the light on, apparently for the students, that resulted in them not just passing, but getting an A in the class. And same thing with our study. The faculty did not change their curriculum. We had the same teachers teaching the same course, just with Packback or without. And for that to happen, it was really encouraging.
I can address the data. We actually didn't have the same type of differences in terms of our final results at MDC, but I really think that's because we're already engaged in some active learning strategies. But the qualitative difference in students' responses about how they feel like they're learning more, how much they enjoy being able to ask their own questions, I think supports all of this. So thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
So the fourth finding was positive student and faculty sentiment. So finally, when surveyed, faculty and students in the experimental group were positive about their experience. Faculty reported that the discussion in Packback was of a higher quality than past discussions. And I think you all are talking about that previously when you talked about faculty reaction. They also reported spending less of their time moderating and managing the discussion with improved student results. And you can see from the chart and then the statement on the side, 83% of students also responded with agree or strongly agree to the question. Based on the discussion you experienced, you find Packback more effective than traditional online discussion boards. So 83% is huge. Kim, as a professor at Miami-Dade, what were your and your students' firsthand experiences with Packback?
I want to share a little bit of an anecdotal story, and that I actually shared in a webinar for Packback earlier this year. I had a course that I decided after using Packback and many of my other courses, there's an MDC online course, and it's a BAS course in victimology in criminal justice. And so since the students are juniors and seniors, I thought, oh, this will be great. So I'm going to go ahead and move to Packback and give them this opportunity to ask their own questions. So surprisingly, I got these kinds of questions the first week. Professor, what are the questions we have to answer for our discussions? Where are they? What am I supposed to talk about? But then by the third week, and I think it's because we really don't give students a chance to ask their own questions sometimes. By the third week, they were saying things like, I was a little scared. I didn't quite know how to do this at first, but now I really like asking my own questions. I get to talk about what I'm interested in. And they would say things like, I really have to read more. I have to understand it more so that I can be ready to write my questions and know what to ask. Some of my students in other Packback or other classes where I've used Packback, they say the same things. They enjoy using and being able to ask the questions and talk about what interests them. They get to know each other more. And they also meet each other a little bit. This person has some interests that I have, so they get to talk to each other and get to know each other. They say that they learn more from each other because, and I really want to emphasize that in terms of teaching. I also see them as learning from others' writing because they're able to see what other students write and how they write and how they expand on their ideas. And I can see them all growing together in terms of their writing, and that's great to see. They say that they like being able to look back. I mentioned that already, to see what they talked about earlier during the semester, and then to keep those conversations going. And they like seeing their statements pinned and featured. They like that, to be able to feel recognized that way. From a teaching perspective, I see amazing discussions and questions about things I would have never thought to ask them. One of my closest colleagues, I talked her into trying Packback, and I did so because I showed her some questions that my students had written, and she told me, she said, "There's no way they didn't write those questions you wrote them." I said, "No, their questions are creative and interesting and engaging, and things that you wouldn't think that they would be wanting to ask." I think as an instructor, it's reinforced what they do in class. They come in and they talk more in terms of their willingness to talk, and you can tell that they're reading. And again, I see the writing improve over time. I think both because they get the immediate feedback from the AI as they're writing. And that's a really neat feature, in that it talks to them about it, not just about grammar, but about content and about breaking their paragraphs and talking in different strategies. So the AI process is great, and they see each other's writing. And I think in general, students, it gives them a place to have voice. And I think that that's enhanced, as I mentioned earlier, by seeing a continuous program over time. I enjoy my grading, my work more, because I'm surprised by their creative questions, and they're a joy to see. And I also can spend more time really focusing on the quality of their questions and their statements, giving them positive feedback. I'm not spending as much time grading and doing individual grading. I'm able to actually expand more in the class with them. And I attribute that to the AI calculations. So.
What a great testimony to Packback. Kathy and Jana, anything to add?
Yes, Kim, you explained it beautifully. I think the other thing that I really found exciting from my faculty is that the students absolutely loved it. I mean, they were so excited, and they kept saying, "Or am I going to have this in my next class?" And that was something I wasn't really expecting. I figured, they get involved, etc. But they liked, it's not really control, but the involvement. And they got to facilitate also with the discussions. And I think that part of it helped retain them, but also the enjoyment that they experienced in the classroom was really exciting. The other part was, just got to throw this in, and this is a little anecdotal. I got this from several of the faculty. They said the biggest thing we had to learn was how to facilitate and teach differently. And Kim probably found that out, as opposed to, hi, I am lecturing and I am doing, I am the central spot. It's now I am facilitating, and the class and I are working together. And I thought they were real upfront about it, real open. They said they had to struggle a little bit with it, but once they did, they found that it worked so much better in really moving forward for the objectives they needed to have for the class. So it was great.
I wanted to add, or to add to that, because one of the things that when I talk to colleagues about it that haven't started yet, they really are not comfortable giving up that control. And then we start to realize by facilitating for them instead of giving them their questions, we're facilitating their learning, and it's helping us to enjoy ours more. So it's wonderful.
And connected with all of that, when the pilot was over and the research study was over, I had faculty knocking at my door. What do I have to do to get Packback back? And I saw a question of, how do you use this in business classes? I'm an English professor. The idea of bringing in discussions, that's what we do. So it's easy to think of, and I could see right away how this would function. But two of the faculty that were the strongest advocates were my biology faculty member and my economics faculty member. And, no offense to the economics faculty members out there, but I'm an English person. Economics doesn't excite me. It's critical, it's important, but it doesn't get me excited and curious. And so for that economics faculty member to comment about the questions that his students were coming up with that led to these great conversations to where, maybe this would have even made me interested in economics and biology. So it really does fit in those disciplines outside of just the psychology and English, places where you can easily consider conversations occurring within the class.
Let me add one more thing but the looseness of my assignments they have to somehow loosely tie each question each week to something in the one or two chapters that were covered. Other than that, they can go beyond. And so in terms of a business course, I could see a great benefit for having Packback, because there are all types of, you can talk about personal interactions with people. You could talk about business roles. I can just see it being really beneficial.
Well, and I think the underlying factor that I hear you all talking about is critical thinking and teaching students how to think critically. And, we know the jobs of the future aren't here yet. We don't even know what they're going to be, but certainly, critical thinking is going to be key to helping our students fill those jobs as they come up. So before we get into the discussion, taking questions, we wanted to ask the panelists to talk about, as the schools return to face-to-face courses, what implications do you believe can be drawn from this study? And Kathy, I'm going to start with you, if I could, please.
So as we're transitioning back to more face-to-face classes slowly, we're hoping to get more students to come back on personally here. When I was first introduced to Packback, it was when it was still, the focus was face-to-face, to add these discussions in our on-campus classes. And, we're here in Houston. I referenced speaking with Elizabeth earlier about one of our campuses that got devastated by Harvey. We always have to be prepared to transition to online. And so by having and our students have become more comfortable in this virtual environment. So having Packback, even in a face-to-face class, can really allow that it's not anonymous, but we feel more comfortable to type our chat, even with our name attached, than we are to raise our hand, speak up in a class. And so you can get that dialogue going outside of class with Packback to integrate then within the classroom. So it can work for the online, but also for our face-to-face and our hybrid classes in the future.
Jana, what do you see coming at us in the future, and how can this help?
Well, I'm going to refer back to a comment that Rufus made at the beginning about professional development for faculty. This is just higher level learning component. If you don't have good communication and ways that students can practice and can, interact with not only the faculty member, but with each other, you aren't doing higher level learning. And, it's not just, hi, I'm giving information and you regurgitate it back. It's got to be this synergy that occurs, and it pushes the level of learning up, how we apply it, etc. And as you said, Anne, with the critical thinking. So I think that this is really imperative for good professional development, and it's also development for the students. I kept saying to Packback when we first started this, I think this would be great in elementary school. I wish I had this when I was in elementary school to practice, because I labor over my writing. I mean, I do it well, but oh my goodness, I labor over it. If I had this, I would have been much freer in how I could do it. I could pull from experience much better. And I just see this as an integral part of how it's a part, but how teaching should occur.
Kim?
I thought about this question and to try to, to think about how to answer it. I really think that this is such a great active learning platform that all it does is enhance any type of teaching. So whether I'm teaching traditional classes or whether they're blended or whether they're fully online, synchronous or asynchronous, the platform allows you to bring in information into the class, to spend that quality time giving them feedback that all students can see. So I think it's one of the, I don't see it, I see it as being beneficial, and we should keep using it. I'll go with that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, I'm going to encourage our audience to put their questions in the chat so we can direct them to our panelists, and we'll go on to our audience Q&A here. There is ongoing research on this particular study, and you'll see that Miami-Dade is a part of that, and Maricopa in Arizona, and Ivy Tech. And Ivy Tech is also introducing demographic data. So this will be an ongoing study. So let's look at what kind of questions we have. One of the questions we have is about using it in business courses, specifically in accounting. And Kathy, I think you mentioned that before. You want to elaborate on that?
So it really, regardless of your discipline, the whole idea is to take whatever that content is of the day, of that week, and for students to ask a question that they're curious about. They connect whatever that topic is to something that they're interested in. So it really doesn't matter the discipline. The whole idea is to get them thinking about your curriculum beyond just what's in the textbook or what's in your LMS. And through that, it gets them curious. So it really fits for every discipline. You allow the students to ask those questions, and you get higher curiosity points for citing your sources. So it gets them looking at what's out there, looking at current events. Because I know for me, that was the best way to always connect, ancient literature to the sitcoms that they were watching on TV. Everything's still interconnected. And when you can make that discovery for them so that they start making the discoveries for themselves, and then they're communicating amongst themselves on that question, it really gets them engaged with whatever your topic is.
I could add one more thing too. I mean, it fosters an interdisciplinary discussion because you have students that, even if they're in your program, say in economics, for instance, you have students who maybe taken the class in economics, but they're in another discipline or another program. And this is really given students the opportunity to bring in what they've learned in other classes and other programs and integrate that information.
You know, we talk about students using it. Is there any special training that faculty have to have in order to be able to use Packback?
Yes, and Packback provides that one-on-one with the faculty, and that's what's so great about this. There was a question in the chat about, what are some of the challenges? And it was basically making sure that the faculty went to their training sessions. I don't know if you found that, Kathy or Kimberly, but it was like, guys, it's free training and you're going to be able to do this. Come on, but it wasn't a huge challenge, but Packback does a great job and they can interact back again. They have folks that they work with. I found it remarkable. We didn't have to take that on. That was all part of the package.
Okay.
So are there other challenges or suggestions that you have for people as they use Packback? I know we're getting some questions on the chat board about how to utilize Packback with student life programs and discussion boards to document student learning. So what have you all seen, and what are some of those challenges or suggestions you would have for people who are looking at this?
Student life. I can see it as being, especially for learning outcomes, you could go back and monitor growth over time in terms of the quality of their questions, the number of questions they ask, whether they self-report from the beginning to the end, their own self-improvement and learning and meta-knowledge. So there are multiple ways that you could do that. In terms of student life, I could see it as a platform that could be used for, say, change making and for service learning, because you could have them adapt the questions that they're asking to do reflective kind of activities on what they're doing in a service learning activity. So I think it would enhance their ability to engage in student life as well.
I think in student life, one of the things I noticed was leadership training was a big piece of student life. And it looks to me that Packback, and Kim, exactly what you're talking about, students can see longitudinally where they started, where they end up in terms of skills, and particularly leadership skills. Great way to document it. Other comments from you guys, from Kathy or Jana?
I know in our study, speaking of that biology faculty member, early in the process, there wasn't much engagement going on with Packback. Students weren't involved. It wasn't being utilized at the level it needed to be. Packback reached out to him and gave him some guidance on how to utilize, and he ended up being, the numbers were the highest then in all of our disciplines, and it got the students excited and engaged, and it hit all of those positives that we saw. So at first, there was a struggle. It was kind of like Jana said, needing to attend those trainings and understand how to utilize. But once you get past that first little, it's like everything else. You learn something new. It takes a little while to figure out how you're going to utilize it. But once you get past that, everything I heard from my faculty members was how easy it was to integrate. The one, I'll give the honest conversation, the one faculty member who struggled with it the most was a computer faculty member, where it was like coding. And so they were doing they were producing rather than talking about topics. I'm outside of my norm of being able to give it in detail. And so she saw it as beneficial in the beginning of the class, but she hadn't seen yet how to be able to utilize it throughout the entire semester. And so for the hands-on, it needs probably some different types of guidance on how to utilize.
Yeah. Kathy, one of the things that some of our instructors did in that arena is they found the same thing, but then they started having the students doing it together. And then the students had the interaction, and then the faculty member could or not join, but they could at least see it. And at least we got more discussion going and ideas flowing a little bit freer that way. Yeah, I agree. Those are some of the more difficult ones, but they seem to have found a way around it. So
one of the questions we have, and I don't know if you all know what the financial model is at your institution, but one of our participants wants to know, how do you respond to students who complain about having to pay for Packback when there is a free built-in LMS discussion platform? So I don't know what you all are doing at your institutions in terms of having students pay for it versus the college absorbing the cost. So would you all comment on that, please?
I did.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy. Yeah.
I think we're about to say probably very similar things. All of us are with community college, or like, I know Kim and I are definitely with community college, and that was one of the things that we discussed with Packback, was making sure we couldn't put that charge onto students. And so our model is that the institution is paying for it. So that is part of the product that we provide. I put it in line with the items that I have to purchase in support of the tutoring and other academic support systems. This is part of that in my lens, because it provides that academic support in just kind of a different way. So if Jana I can come up with more answers, but
we had the same philosophy that you had. We just put it into professional development instead. And because I think it also fits very clearly there for faculty. We currently are we'll pick it up in another year and a half or 2 years, but we're currently using CARES and CRISA money to pay for it because it fits right into the online, support for professional development or support for students. So.
Well, and I would suggest for former president, a couple of other sources of funding would be the student activity fee that students already pay and could support their learning. And then also use college foundations because it could be, a really good expenditure from your college foundation to support this at the institution as well. So those would be a couple of other sources as opposed to going to school.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. We actually went to the foundation first and they were willing to do it. But when the CARES and CRISA money came, we went, okay. And so the foundation is just holding on to that. So if we need it later, we can go back to them. But thanks for mentioning that.
Okay. I'm looking to see if
we're using a Title III grant to get us started. But, conversation with my president is with Title III grant, you try out products. If they work, you're committing to purchasing them in the future. Yeah. And so when the data continues to show, as I feel it will, we will just make this part of our operating funds to support. For those where that is happy to be put onto the student, really it's just like a small textbook or not a textbook, but again, English, the additional reading novel or something. It is a cost, but what I think there are ways to be able to explain where it's one of the instructional materials that you have to have. Sometimes you need a calculator, sometimes you need pens, paper, and this is part of the instructional materials for this class. But the results do suggest that it is worth that cost for the success and completion in the curriculum.
Well, I think you can go back to that 83% positive rating that students gave to Packback and use that, certainly as part of your justification, both to students as well as to the administration to pay for it. I'm looking to see if we have any other questions. So I would say to our participants, now's your time to add some more questions for our panelists, because they certainly have had a lot of experience with Packback.
I saw a question of someone asking about using Brightspace D2L. That is what we use at University Park, and it integrates perfectly.
It works with D2L. That's correct.
Packback has no problem with any LMS that I know of anyway. That was one of the things we checked out right away. And it's worked beautifully. We happen to have Canvas.
And we have Blackboard. And so it integrates well with all three.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, again, about the questions of disciplines that might not be like psychology or criminal justice. I saw someone who also teaches criminal justice classes as I do. And one of the abilities of an instructor is to use the praise and there's a praise feature built into Packback. And you can praise why the question should be important for the class or what did they do really well. And when you do that, all students in the class can see that information. So you praise them, but you also can use it as a teaching tool. And so if you were in the middle, say your third or fourth week, and you were struggling with getting students to engage, you could use that feedback kind of tool as a way to highlight something good in someone's question, but also to engage other students in moving towards maybe the curriculum that you want them to move towards or something. So there are some real strategies that you can use with the system itself to facilitate that continued conversation with your students.
So what do you all see at your institutions going forward related to Packback? Are you going to be expanding it to other courses at your institution?
We are currently in a review process that I'm aware of. So my hope is that we do. We're in a review process.
Yeah, we're going to be expanding it. Earlier, I mentioned that I wish I had it in elementary school, and I'm not doing a comparison to adult basic ed to elementary school. But in those arenas where folks, are reading at a lower reading level, et cetera, we're going to start taking a look at how we can implement it in adult basic education also. I'm kind of excited about that. I think it'll give them some encouragement, freedom, et cetera. Yeah.
And at Lone Star, we getting ready to sign the contract to bring it, and all faculty are invited to utilize it. And so we're going to try and get it through all of University Park. And connected with that, I commented about ESOL faculty. They were really excited with it, though they did acknowledge some of the struggles they had, kind of like, adult basic ed. Some didn't have the strong writing skills. And I know there was a lot of interaction between my faculty and Packback on already where Packback was being responsive of ways that they could change and integrate to support ESOL. I also know that they are looking at connecting with K through 12 campuses. They've been in touch with our ISD, independent school district here in Texas. So there's a lot of opportunities through that route as well.
Yeah, I know Packback is starting to have discussion with superintendents about extending it into K-12. So Kim, it looks like there's a question for you about how, as an instructor, you grade Packback discussion.
Okay, one of the nice things about the platform is that you set up your class at the very beginning, and you determine the percentage of the the grade for your entire, your student's entire grade right at the beginning of your semester. So it gives you good planning. You set up the number of questions that they need to pose per week and the number of responses. You can make a decision right then when you set up the Packback section, whether they get partial credit or not, whether they get partial credit in terms of their citations or not. And then once that is set, each week you'll get a report, and it is based on the criteria that you set for the grading. And their report will list they got 25 out of 25 points, and you move that right into your grade book. And the benefit of that is that part is already graded. But then you can go back in and you look at the questions that Packback suggests that you should consider featuring for a week. You look at the insights about each class. So the percentage of the class that participated, what strategies you might want to use. So you get this report once a week as well about the insights. And then you can spend your time in terms of grading, highlighting and praising and coaching. And so you're not, the grading is going to be done automatically. You do need to move it in the MLS or the LMS, but I'm going to tell you it takes about 5 minutes to do your column for that particular information, for that grading week. So the grading part becomes more qualitative and it becomes more effective, I think, than us trying to calculate their numbers.
Thank you. And there's another question that says, is there a way to guide students from non-Socratic questions to Socratic questions? Who wants to take that one?
No, from Socratic to non-Socratic.
Well, the AI does it a little bit. The AI reminds them, and so as they're typing over on the right-hand side, I'm using my hand so that it makes sense. So you're on your screen, and over beside you, as you're typing as a student, once you hit 20 words, it starts giving you information. And the more you type, it'll tell you what your curiosity score is. So the curiosity score is a score that's generated by the AI based on your content, based on whether you have an open-ended versus closed-ended question. And if the question is still open or still closed-ended, the system will prompt you to adapt and change your question. And what I mean you is the student, as the student is writing. So the AI itself, if you get your students to start really paying attention to the feedback that they're getting automatically, it helps them to move from Socratic to non-Socratic questions.
Thank you. Any other comments that you all would like to make?
Oh, I see that Jessica included that there's going to be a product update where the gradebook will sync. So FYI, although it's not a big
deal. Okay, well, any last comments from our presenters? Jana?
Can you still hear me, Ann?
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. My computer is throwing me out. I don't know what just happened. No, I would just say that in conclusion that this is probably one of the most exciting things that we've dealt with for our online and also hybrid in a couple of years. And we started this with Packback, the experiment prototype with Packback before COVID started. And I am just enthralled by it. So those are my answers.
Thanks, Jana. Kim?
Sure. Any platform that allows students to have autonomy and choice and self-motivation is a platform that we should be using in our pedagogy. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Kathy, you get the final word.
Oh, no. So all I can say is last year we were in a budget freeze, and so we were not able to implement Packback at Lone Star. I had a faculty member asking, so what grant can I apply for? What can I do? How can I get this into my class? And she was not one of my faculty members that's always knocking at my door asking those types of things. So to get a faculty that isn't usually as engaged in that kind of stuff to say, this product works, we need it. What do we need to do? And her thank you when the news went out that we were getting back with Packback, and her excitement. You don't, just like Kim said, when you get students excited, you've got it. When you get faculty excited, you've got it. So I'm looking forward to how this year is going to come forward, as all of our faculty will be invited to use Packback.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to our panelists, and thank you for our participants for being here today. And, it's all about student success. I think, as you all have talked about, all about faculty success as well, because faculty want to know that their students are being successful. And so it's about arming them with an additional tool that helps students to be more successful. So thank you all, and great session, and good luck to you. Happy in-person classes as you go forward.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jan, and everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.